eagles don't fly with pigeons.
Why is our churn rate like this? We offer a great product. We've got great staff.
Client referrals is everything. I tell my team this all the time. Our gross retention rate is the number one metric we need to be tracking toward.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle.
Before we get started today, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. Welcome to The Business Game. We're excited to bring you another episode packed with insights, and today we have a phenomenal guest.
That's right, Jamie. We're sitting down with Brie Aletto, the CEO of Altvia, a game-changing vertical SaaS platform transforming the private capital markets.
With the global SaaS market projected to hit a massive $1.2 trillion by 2034, driven by AI and cloud adoption, Brie is leading Altvia through an incredible growth phase, doubling revenue and earning major awards like the 2024 Colorado Titan 100.
And including the Family Wealth Report Award. In this episode, we will explore how Brie is positioning Altvia in this AI-driven landscape and scaling a niche SaaS business without losing its edge.
We'll also dive into her approach to leading through change, building trust in a relationship-driven industry, and empowering women leaders in a male-dominated world of private equity and tech.
It's going to be a conversation full of actionable insights from a CEO. So let's get started with Brie Aletto. This is The Business Game,
A podcast that moves the needle. Hi, Brie. How are you today?
I am doing great. I'm in beautiful Colorado here in the States. How are you all doing?
A little bit chilly over here in Australia. It's winter for us, so we've got the heater blaring above us, but not too bad up here north. So we're a bit luckier than down south, where it is now snowing. So which is not great. Although you would be used to the snow.
We're used to the snow here, so we take it all. But of course, during the winter, we're skiing. So life is good year round here in Colorado, but I'm sure it's pretty good over there too.
Yeah, we do have some great ski fields, actually. Really good. Now, Brie, you are the CEO of Altvia, which is a SaaS company that's sort of breaking ceilings at the moment, if that's a good way to put it. So the global SaaS market is projected to reach, I think it's $1.3 trillion, I believe, by 2031, or that's a projection for it. And the vertical SaaS platforms like those for private capital markets are gaining traction for tailored solutions and rapid ROI. So let's jump into how Altvia is leveraging this moment to stay ahead in a competition and AI-influenced landscape, because AI is obviously coming in a lot. It's automating a lot of things and stuff like that. So with this in mind and the SaaS market booming, forecasting this 1.2 trillion sort of boom up to 2034, which isn't that far away. How are you capitalizing on this in Altvia?
Sure, good question. And I think AI is obviously has people, I think, just with a big question mark right now. I think there's a lot of buzz and excitement, but there's also so much uncertainty. And so we've entered the AI space with trepidation, but also extreme excitement. And there's such an opportunity right now. And especially in any space, everyone's watching dollars and cents with uncertainty around the economy. And so if we can leverage AI in a way that can help drive efficiencies and cost savings, and our AI agents, our AI tool, we call her AIMe, and we are constantly encouraging people to think about AIMe as an intern that you can train and can build efficiencies around your organization. And so I think you've got to be thinking about AI in that way. It's not just all hype. You have to really be solving a problem. And that's where I think we're going to see companies kind of ebb and flow in and out of the AI space, trying to just capitalize on the hype, but not actually solving problems. And so where we are really focused is understanding the use case, understanding that, again, it has to drive cost savings, it has to drive efficiency, and it has to solve a real problem. And so every day, that's the conversation, is what are our customers experiencing? Could AI help solve those things?
Okay, so how is AIMe enhancing client experience and fundraising and deal management?
Good question. So, with any traditional CRM or truly any old, it's hard to call them all old school, but traditional legacy software systems,
Mhm.
oftentimes it is hard to gain adoption across a firm. So either, oftentimes it's the top dogs that are asking, their employees to be leveraging the system. So it's a good question. And as with any traditional software tool, oftentimes adoption can ebb and flow based on the persona in a
Mhm.
company. And I think that's where AI presents such an amazing opportunity, is to really gain adoption across a full company and make it so much easier. So you'll see tools like Superhuman that sit on top of Gmail. And many of us know how to use our Gmail, yes, but sometimes it can take us longer than we want to search for things or to draft email or to do things. And so that's where I think AI is so interesting, is it's making these legacy systems, it's not putting them out of business, certainly. We still need structured databases. We still need software for many different things
Mhm.
in our businesses. But can we make it more usable? Could we speed up how we're using the software? And that's what we're looking to do with CRMs. Make your data more accessible, make it so that you have firm-wide adoption, so that a managing partner that's on the road, that's doing a road show and meeting with existing investors or potentially meeting with prospective investors, how do you organize that road show? How do you keep track of your notes quickly so that you're not pinging your EA, late at night after you go out to a dinner and you want to remember to follow up on certain things
Yeah.
on Monday morning? And that's where, you put this at their fingertips. You put AIMe at somebody's fingertips to say, voice to text or whatever it might be, what would be reasonable next steps based on having a great meeting with XYZ prospect? And it will spit out and tell you, here's the next steps. I've created tasks for you. And here is a draft email that you can send on Monday morning when you're back in the office.
Oh, wow. That
And it's
sounds
just
fantastic.
efficiencies, right? I mean, that's efficiencies, and it's helping to have, again, it's not removing the human element per se, but it
Yeah.
is speeding things up.
Yeah. I
Nice.
think, AI is such a hot topic, and I feel like I say this in nearly every episode that
do.
we have. Yeah. But it's just a situation now where, I think people are, there's actually something that I'm going to roll back a bit. So people are worried that AI is going to take roles, take their jobs and things like that. And I can understand that worry. So, I mean, Google has come out now with these, I don't know if you've heard, these 9, I think it's 8 or 9 brand new products they've sort of been moving in the shadows, working on. And a lot of them, one of them in particular could possibly put like complete dev teams out of jobs. These are massive things. So coming back on rolling back to what you said is, it's automating jobs for staff to make their life easier. I think people tend to forget that the creativity behind the AI and yours in particular for AIMe, it's to enhance their job, not to take over their job. And I just think that's something really important for people to keep pushing that narrative to settle staff members sort of globally, that AI is not there to take over our jobs. It is there to enhance our jobs and enhance our workflow. And that sounds exactly like what you've done with AIMe, that's exactly the purpose of what it's doing.
That's right. And I heard someone say it today, and it really resonated with me, which was AI is there to answer the questions now. It used to always be, who can answer the questions, and AI is there oftentimes to answer the questions, but they don't know the questions to ask. And so that's where it becomes very important for the human element to still be involved. What are the right questions to be training and guiding AI in the right ways, that you can't remove that human element to guide and train that AI agent in the right way. So I think that's an important component to be thinking about as well.
Yeah. Okay. So in a market where vertical SaaS is gaining ground, what's a key challenge you face in keeping Altvia's platform the go-to choice for private equity firms?
Yeah. at the end of the day, you see a lot of these software industries ebbing and flowing from platform to point solutions and back and forth. And, at any given point in time, somebody might want to just go with one specific point solution and integrate them all, or they might want to go with a platform because that's easier and you've got all the systems in one place. But no matter what people are looking for, again, is just for problems to be solved and for them to be solved efficiently. And especially in the private equity market, it's so funny because they're oftentimes amazing technology investors, but they're not necessarily the best technology users. And
Yeah.
so they're oftentimes, sometimes the laggards, honestly, and they do things manual for a long period of time. So where we're really changing the game is to say you can still leverage an enterprise grade CRM in Salesforce, but you don't have to pay a consultant and you don't have to have it be so cumbersome and heavy duty, take months and months to implement. But if you verticalize this, it still can be that nimble style, call it a point solution or a platform, depending on how, you want to look at it and what tools you're using and why, what workflows. But the point is, like, that's what people are looking for. They need it to solve a challenge and they need it to do it effectively and efficiently. And by verticalizing a platform like Salesforce, you're able to do that versus trying to customize something to fit for the industry. And that, I think, is the game changer for other companies that try to build things from scratch. We're capitalizing on the Salesforce platform. So we don't have to build 3,000 integrations ourselves.
Yeah.
We're able to leverage that R&D, again, the integration platform, the security that Salesforce offers, while also offering that nimble style implementation experience that specializes in this specific market and industry, eliminating the need for heavy internal resources or external spend with consultants.
You stepped into the CEO role at Altvia during a high growth phase, which must have been very intense. What was the toughest challenge you faced early on, and how did you keep your team focused?
So I became the CEO after a founder that had done an incredible job of building an amazing culture and sustaining the company through really bootstrapping the business, not much external capital to keep the company afloat and to help it grow. And there was an existing leadership team that had done that as a part of the founder. And so that was the difficult part, was really thinking about how do you combine some new resources in the leadership team with the folks that have this institutional knowledge, and how do you combine those two and being thoughtful about that? An embarrassing but honest story is in my first board meeting with our private equity sponsors. They talked a lot about, these people have gotten you here, but will they get you to where you need to go?
Yeah.
And in, self-reflection, I knew the answer was likely that some people were going to have to go.
Yeah.
And I started crying in a board meeting with all men around the table. And, I was just, I still could beat myself up about that situation. And luckily they said, this is what makes you a dynamic leader. This is what makes you the human being that will be there and thoughtful about exiting these people in the right way that's respectful. And they were very supportive, while also knowing that I needed to think about what and how do I build the right team that will take us to where we need to go. And so, those are always the hardest things that you have to do, or have hard conversations and make the hard calls that no one else wants to do. And, you learn that quickly, that the faster you can make those decisions, the better off you'll be. And someone said to me, when there's doubt, there's no doubt. And it is true. If you have any doubt about someone, it's probably inevitable anyway. And so the faster you can move on those key hiring decisions, usually the better off.
With that in mind, we had a guest only the other week, who very much echoes exactly what you're saying. And one of his sort of, I guess, mantras is, what got you here won't necessarily get you there. And he was all about the, hire slow, fire fast. So with that, and this is something I didn't get to ask him, I guess a lot of leaders and not just CEOs, but leaders across the board, it can be a real struggle to actually have to look at your team, especially when you've come in new, as you said, and be like, okay, we need to change things. How do you have that hard conversation with someone, say, that's been there for years, that has got you here, but isn't in fact going to get you there? How do you, I guess, and I think maybe, and I certainly am not putting this down on men, but I think being female, we tend to have a more natural nurture within us that becomes, and I think, I know myself, I almost take it personally if I need to do and deliver that news. How do you deliver that news to someone when they have worked hard and they have got the business to that point, but they can't then accelerate it past there?
Listen, it's hard. It is definitely a hard part of the business. I follow the 3 C's, which are, in how you grow a business, and that's capital, clarity, and care. And I think you have to be caring. Like, that's just in my nature. I can't turn that off. And that was a conversation I had to be very clear with the board of, when I exit someone, I'm going to have to do it my way, which means being thoughtful about, they have a family, or they are going to be left completely flat-footed, or whatever it might be. And there have been times where we've buffered in a transition period because, I knew they were a great professional. They just weren't the right professional for where we were in the organization. And so I'm always very thoughtful. The great thing about being private equity backed is there's a portfolio of companies. And so oftentimes there are companies within the portfolio that need a good resource as well. And so I'm oftentimes trying to find out if there might be some of those opportunities that I can very quickly help them get a warm lead into.
Yeah.
And again, the conversation has to be led with clarity and care. So the more transparent I can be, the better. And I've gotten better at this over time. To start, it is hard to be so candid about performance not, hitting the mark,
Yeah.
or again, based on new standards. Maybe they hit the mark before, but the standards have been raised. And so I've gotten better over time, but I would say the more you can lean in, and I've said this many times, but hard conversations lead for an easy life, and easy conversations lead for a hard life. And I know when I'm entering a hard conversation, I can feel it in my gut. And I always try to write down notes, and I always try to lead the conversation with emphasizing that I do care about them. And it is genuine because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, you have to be thoughtful about, be clear, and then show them that you care and help them with the next steps. I think that's an important component. Who knows where and when you might overlap again. This person is going to be out in the market, and you want to be thoughtful about that. I always say this, like I do, no matter what, want someone to look back on their resume and think about their time with our company with gratitude in some way, shape, or form. You learned something while you were with us. And sometimes that is being able to say to someone, hey, you're ready for the next step even, and we don't have it here, but I would love to help you find something else. I know you're ready for it, but I can't create a role just to keep someone. And that's where I think I've seen other companies and other leaders just, they kind of put somebody into a role, or they pigeonhole people for too long. And I want what's best for the human being. Of course, I want what's best for the business, but I also do want what's best for the human being. So I think it's important to try to combine those two things and be clear that what's right for the business might not be right for the human, and vice versa sometimes.
Sounds great. What's the one piece of advice that you'd give to a first-time CEO about leading through a company's inflection point?
Obviously, it depends on all kinds of dynamics. As I mentioned, we are a private equity backed business. So we have a private equity board that we're reporting to. And I'm consistently learning how to do this, and remembering that while they might own the company, they don't operate the company. And so I think understanding and finding your voice and having confidence in your gut, you made it there for a reason. And then that also coupled with, oftentimes, again, you hit this leadership role because of accomplishing something and because of knowing the answers. And I read this book called You Can't Know It All, and it was so helpful because I was so used to being that go-to person for our sales and marketing teams, or anyone in the business really, because I I was in there operating every day.
Yeah.
And suddenly when you become the CEO, you're not necessarily the go-to person for the answers. You're the go-to person to ask the right questions.
Mhm.
And that takes some time to get used to. And so, and this is their turn, right? This is the leader's turn to find the answers and do that and make their mark. And so I think you immediately assume when you're doing a one-on-one and someone brings you, some questions or issues, that it's your job to help them solve it, or that it's your job to solve it and it's your job to help them solve it. And so learning that is tricky for someone that's shifting from being a peer to being the leader.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you get promoted in, or it's a little easier, I think, when you come externally into the role automatically.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When it's internal, it's, you I guess, you obviously you remain friends and you have close bonds with your peers, but all of a sudden you're at a level now above them where, I guess for those peers as well, it's a learning curve when it is internal, to almost, learn to respect that leadership has elevated into a CEO position. So yeah, definitely not easy, definitely easier coming externally into that role, I think. When you're in that position, how do you decide when to push for big changes versus preserving what's already working?
This is always something that you've got to be comfortable with, which is taking risks. And you also have to be willing and ready to pull the plug if it's not working.
Yeah.
And so I think, of course, data is the most important element to this. We are constantly, every single quarter, reanalyzing win-loss reports. What is our ideal customer profile? Do we need to adjust our messaging? Is it hitting? The more data you can have at your fingertips to help make these decisions, the better, certainly. But you also, as I mentioned, you got there for a reason. So you do have to trust your gut sometimes. And you've got to give it enough time to see things through, but you also have to know when to call it. So ideally, when you're going to make the call, it is determining at that point, we're going to put this on the calendar. Like, we're going to continue to check in here, but we're going to put this on the calendar basically, and be ready to pivot back. Pricing strategies, I think, are oftentimes the most common to pivot, or a product roadmap. And with pricing strategies, again, it can be pretty quick that you can see in the win-loss reports, is this making an impact? Are we faster to close? Are we seeing a higher velocity because we've lowered pricing? It's a pretty quick turnaround, but some of the other things aren't so clear. And so you do have to just be ready and willing. And that's the CEO's job, is to make the call when it's time to pull the plug, and to have that confidence that you're going to pivot back, or you're going to stay the course, and you're really going to take the risk, and you're going to see it through.
What do you think's the decision that a CEO makes isn't, whilst always hoping that it's the correct decision, isn't always the right decision. And as you said, you lay those plans, so if you need to pivot back, that hopefully you can. How, though, would you, to other sort of CEOs listening, or, high-level decision makers that are in these positions, what's a bit of, advice that you would give to structure a situation so you could pivot back if need be?
Yeah. So we've used a couple different frameworks. At one point, we were running off of the entrepreneurial operating system, which has a ton of different frameworks that you can leverage to essentially analyze these things. And I do think a framework is helpful, whether it's, making a big decision from a strategic standpoint, or it is, managing through some personnel complications based on, disagreements or things like that. It is best to have a framework that you're walking into. And I think it was Jeff Bezos, I can't remember which leader it was, that basically ahead of the meeting, when you're going to talk about something difficult, everything needs to be written down ahead of time. Like, you give them a prompt and you ask everyone to read through all of the information ahead of time, versus entering the conversation that day on the first time, just opening the conversation. And I do think when we have big conversations that we need to have, I like to put together like a Google form or something that can be anonymous. And then people feel very comfortable putting in, what are your thoughts? Do you think this this pivot or this decision that we made, how is it impacting you? What have been the downstream impacts that we maybe didn't think about? Or, what are your opinions of how we could optimize this? If you had to make the call right now, if you were the CEO, what would you say? What would you do?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, when they're put in that seat of having to also make the call or the decision, things really come out. And then having everyone read through that affords itself to a much more productive conversation the next day. And it does allow people to be much more frank and open and honest ahead of time. So then when you enter the conversation, you do feel like you're getting all the right inputs. You do have to make the call, as I mentioned before, as to, and there's a decision-making framework called RAPID. It's an acronym. Can't list exactly what it is right this second, but if you follow that acronym, it basically says at the very beginning, you need to determine who's going to make the actual final decision. And I think that is an important component. Like, you can get all of the inputs, but if it's a pretty big decision, it needs to be the CEO's decision. Potentially the board is involved, but there are other decisions that you can empower your leaders to make if it's, again, less detrimental, call it, to the business. But for the most part, in some of those big conversations, you need to be the one that says upfront, we're going to discuss this. I want all of your inputs. At the end of the day, this is going to be my call, and we are going to all walk out of here aligned to the rest of the organization, because that is extremely important, and that is what being a team means.
Yeah, I think they are personally very, very wise words, because there's nothing, I think, worse than walking into a meeting and being completely blindsided by what's happening. I think instinctually we assume the worst and hope for the best. And I think that's the last thing you want to do to your team, is have that sort of fear, that gut, oh God, what is this meeting about? What's going to happen now? So yeah, the Google, sheets and putting that out to the team members, asking them the questions. But I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so simple. It's so simple.
It takes no time.
Way to do it. It's really, really good.
Just nice to give a summary so you know what you're walking into. And
yeah.
if you need to, do a little bit of research.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for our listeners, the acronym for RAPID is recommend, agree, perform, input, and decide.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the recommend piece is great, because that's a part of the form, right?
Yeah.
Is I'm known for messing up idioms and sayings and acronyms all the time. So that's why I didn't take the risk and trying to say it perfectly.
It's okay. We got you.
It's a great framework. So I do recommend that. And especially as a first-time CEO that's trying to enter some of these conversations for the first time, it's been a very helpful framework for me, especially, again, using something as simple as a Google form up front to start guiding the conversations that you're going to have the next day.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is probably a good segue into building high trust leadership. And to me, it sounds like that's something that's probably at the forefront of your mind, having your team trust you just in the way that you're speaking and the thought processes that you put behind what your actions for your team. But in private capital, relationships are everything. How do you build trust with clients and your team in a way that drives long-term loyalty?
So one of our core values is trust and transparency. And I do feel like that is paramount, even with the board, for example. Yep. So, if there's bad news that I have to deliver to the board, between the board and myself, we have built such trust that I feel completely comfortable being as transparent as I need to. They're the first call that I give. I'm not dreading giving them bad news, because they have built that trust with me that, I can be transparent. And I think the same is true with our clients, with my leaders, is we have to be willing to say what we need to say and trust that they're going to take it in a light that I'm being transparent because I think it's important, right? And not just, I think vulnerability sometimes gets a little bit tied with maybe not necessarily weakness, but I don't look at vulnerability and transparency necessarily as they have to go together per se. I think transparency can very much be honest, like it's honesty, right? And it's just being truthful to whether it's I've, come up short as a vendor to you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, or, we are still investing in that product and it's not there, it's not where it needs to be quite yet. And it is being very honest. And yes, that is an element of vulnerability, but I think it is just, this is transparently where we are right now. And I think that builds trust with your clients. And I also think it builds trust with a leadership team, is being that transparent with them. They know, my leadership team, our employees know what's happening at any given point in time. I allow them, if they would like to join leadership team meetings, they can. We take notes from leadership team meetings that they're allowed to view and see. In our company-wide meetings, we have anonymous questionnaires that they can send and submit questions to me, to anybody on the leadership team. And I think it's important to build that trust and loyalty. We're not going to be, necessarily always the best vendor or the best employer, but we can be very transparent about where we are falling short and how we're going to improve that. And I think that makes a difference versus kind of sticking your head in the sand and saying, oh, we're doing the best we can. And that's what it is. It's like, yeah, like this we weren't great at. And I think that's important. It's important as a leader too. Like the more you can lean into your weaknesses, the better off you are in building a team around you that's going to support you. And it's hard. There are times when I'm thinking to myself, ooh, I should probably know this, right? Like, oh gosh, I'm the CEO, I should know the answer to this question. Or, financials, however many acronyms there are there, however many numbers you should know off the top of your head. And that's just not something that comes as natural to me. So I think the sooner you can just say, that's not my strength. Like that is, I need help. And you hire for that. You hire to those people around you to really support you, to supplement your skill set.
Can you share a time that your trust was tested, whether it was with a client or internally, and how you got through it, I guess?
Ooh. As I was mentioning before, I was a part of the leadership team prior to becoming the CEO or founder. Ended up deciding to step back after taking on the private equity capital. And I very quickly then became the CEO and, the boss of people that were my peers and many people that had built a company that I was now running, which is very daunting and intimidating when you look around the table and you feel like people know more than you.
Yeah.
And so I think, lesson learned, I think I felt compelled to bring those people into certain conversations with the board or to try to, connect with them as much as I could because I was very worried about losing them and what we would do without their institutional knowledge of the business. And again, it's a lesson learned, you can't have, and you have to remember, like, you're not on the team, you're coaching the team.
Yeah.
And that you have to find your peers that you can talk to about things. And people say it all the time, it is a lonely place to be in. But I think I've seen myself and other leaders get caught up in wanting to build rapport and trust by being maybe too transparent with your leaders and realizing that some things do need to be kept to just you or just you and the board. That is why you really do need to find an outlet somewhere else, which is always hard because no one else will have the context that your leadership team has or that your board has.
What's your outlet in that situation?
So my outlet, I'm a part of YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which is a CEO group that I joined. My dad was actually a part of it, so I knew about it. Again, they're an amazing outlet, and over time they understand, your business and whatnot, but they're not in it every day, right? And so trying to get them to see the context is not as simple as being able to lean over to my CTO or my, head of sales and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm having this issue with so-and-so, like, what do you think? And, they just don't have that context, right? And so you just, in all honesty, it is tricky. It is a hard thing, and you end up bringing it home, and then your spouse knows too much, and it's
exactly.
it's tricky, right? And so
All
it's
of
a
a
common
sudden, a family member hates some random person named Sharon in the company.
I'm like, oh no, we're not. I hope they're not at the holiday party.
It's like, yeah, we don't like that Sharon, do we?
Oh, I know. It's so true. So anyway, that's always going to be a struggle, I think, for CEOs in general.
Yeah.
It's just having, and I think, a lot of private equity boards are trying to put in operational partners to try to bridge that gap and give somebody that the CEO has an outlet with. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, the ops partner is employed by the private equity partner. So no matter what, it's still tricky for a CEO. And it's hard not to think about filtering some of those things that you share with them out of, out of protecting your team and protecting your
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. What's a practical habit you rely on to keep the alignment strong across your team and your stakeholders?
So we do bi-weekly check-ins with our board,
Okay.
and essentially every leader has one of those check-ins. So they end up presenting probably once or twice a quarter. And I think that is an important element in keeping folks aligned with the board at some point within the quarter versus just waiting for quarterly board meetings. It's almost like a mini board meeting. It's a quick hour, but still it holds people a bit more accountable to making sure that we're focused on the right things versus just, again, waiting until a board meeting. The other thing that I think is important is the OKR setting. I mean, it sounds so tactical, but I do think that, in making sure that you've got your company-wide goal set, what can you be doing every quarter to be driving closer and closer to those at the end of the year?
Yeah.
And tracking to those on a weekly basis within your leadership team. It should be your leadership team agendas should be, again, tracking towards KPIs, tracking towards your OKRs, and then identifying any issues and trying to bring those to a resolution. And trying to keep to those core things oftentimes can really just zero people in on what's important.
Okay. I want to, sorry, Dan,
Yeah,
you're going to say, okay.
No.
I want to shine the spotlight on you personally a little bit. If
Dun, dun,
that's
dun.
okay with you.
Sure.
So under your leadership, Altvia has doubled its revenue run rate and won multiple awards, including the 2024 Family Wealth Reporter Award and the Colorado Titan 100 for you yourself. So you won that. Can you talk us to start with through those awards? And I'm pretty sure I saw a third one on the website. I don't know if that was contributed directly to you or not, but I'm sure I saw 3 and I've only got 2 here. So apologies if I've missed one or several. But what do these awards mean for you personally, coming in as that CEO and then sort of doubling the revenue run and then
Amazing.
actually being acknowledged for that?
I'm sure you can relate to this. Us ladies have been raised to be humble and not to brag. And so it is always very tricky and hard. I think anytime I'm in a room, my least favorite part of a conversation is my introduction. And that's why sometimes it's hard being on podcasts to have to do your introduction because it feels like you're bragging. And again, I was always taught to be humble, which I'm grateful for. So it is tricky to talk through these things, but I am always very proud to talk about the business because it's a culmination of so many different things, so many different people, so much hard work. And, we don't take it for granted. I've seen your growth slow and you've got to be willing and ready to buckle in and see it through hard times. So, I do think a lot of these awards and the things that we're being, recognized for have to do with bringing in the right people. And a big part of that, which I think is associated to my awards, which is I'm very entrepreneurial. My dad was an entrepreneur, countless different types of businesses, always picking up things and running with it and figuring out a way to turn it into something that was, a money maker. And he just set that precedence for me.
Yeah.
And so I have always looked for other leaders or other people around the organization that have an entrepreneurial mindset, are the people that are raising their hands and saying, put me in. I love a Cinderella story. I love somebody that's got kind of a chip on their shoulder that said, I want to make my mark. I don't need the person that's done it 5 times. I want the person that wants to do it one time really great.
Yeah.
And that's a matter of finding those people. And so I do think that, I'm grateful in my success and my journey. And I think, my dad always used to say it's a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck. And I think that's so true. Like, I've been very, very lucky. I've had some amazing mentors through this process. And I hope that my journey is only just beginning as it pertains to my career. And, my favorite part is now watching new, especially young women, enter their workforce and practice asking for a raise with me, or practice, advocating for themselves in some way, shape, or form, because I always struggled with that. Like I said at the beginning of this, I struggle to talk about what I've accomplished. And so I'm
Yeah.
trying to help others learn how to do that much earlier on in their careers and be proud of what they've done and talk about it more, because it's just not something that I think we oftentimes were raised to do. Maybe that's changed in today's generation with, social media and always putting yourself out there, but
Yeah.
it certainly wasn't how I was raised. And so
Oh,
it's still something
same.
I'm learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. Do you find by going through the processes, because I found this myself, not so much with the same conversation, but by going through the processes with a staff member, particularly the females, and explaining things like, okay, so maybe phrase it like this, phrase it like that. I never would have phrased things the way I'm telling them to do it when I was that age. And then I think to myself, would I actually ask this now? And quite often the answer is, oh, no, I wouldn't be game. But through that process of helping them, I find that it actually elevates me in what I'm willing to ask for and stuff like that, or willing to take, okay, yeah, I did do a good job on something. Like, do you find that helps sort of your inner confidence as well for you, being, I guess,
Absolutely.
raised a similar way to you? Sound like you were raised as me as well, that we sort of minimize ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that is spot on. And one of the biggest questions that I have learned to ask in my one-on-ones or conversations with young women are, when they bring me a problem, it's like, okay, if you were talking to your friend, what would you tell them to do?
Yeah.
And I have to keep thinking about that always myself too, which is, if this were my best friend, what would I want them doing in this position? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and yet why can't I, there are so many times where I'm like, okay, I got to buck up, because this is what I would want, my
Yeah.
sister, my friend, or anybody in my life. It doesn't have to be a woman, my husband.
Yeah.
What would I want my child? What would I want for them? And why is it so much harder for us to self-advocate? I don't know. But I think every time you practice it, you get better,
Mm.
and coming in prepared is extremely important. I had a coach for a little while, and he, I would practice with him, and he also encouraged me that to call it out. Like, if this is something that's hard for you, you need to say that up front and kind of disarm it almost.
Yeah.
So it's like entering the conversation in that way and saying, this is hard for me to do, is to advocate for myself. But here is why I do believe that I deserve XYZ. And it does help for some reason when you start to say that. It's helped me in my vulnerable state, my emotions. And after crying in a board meeting, anytime I'm entering a conversation that I do feel is potentially emotionally charged,
Yeah.
that I have to say that out front. Like, if I call it out front or up front, oftentimes it kind of removes the emotion from it.
Yeah.
And so I do encourage women to just, again, or anybody, is just be the transparent person, as I was mentioning before.
Yeah.
It's like the more you can be authentically you, the more likely you are to be successful in what you're doing, because it's authentic that you care at the
Mm.
end of the day.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
it's very obvious that you're passionate about empowering the next generation of female leaders. So what's one thing that you're doing at Altvia to create opportunities for women in tech and finance?
Good question. So we were actually it's not only at Altvia, we're talking also in my YPO network about what we can be doing to support people that want to be, again, entrepreneurial, that want to learn about opportunities in Colorado. We're very fortunate. We're in Boulder, that we have access to so many bright young individuals at CU, that I'm constantly asking, okay, is there some form of internship program, or is there something that we can be doing here that can facilitate more networking? So many people, especially in the private equity space, it is very male dominant. And so, is there something that we can be offering or doing to provide education or access to private equity opportunities? And I think a big part of that is going to be continuing to build this network between, we have this customer network that they're oftentimes hiring or we're hiring from them.
Mm.
And so we're sharing job opportunities with each other, which I think is extremely important. Sometimes people have gone from being on the private equity side and they'd like to get into the operating side. And so we've hired people from our customers in the past and vice versa. If I've got somebody that's been with me and they're super interested in getting on the other side of the table, it is always encouraging them to take a class, learn more about the finance sector, and then sharing and networking their information with our clients. Because a lot of times our clients do need someone technical inside of their firm to support them. And then over time, they can learn, other elements of the business. They don't necessarily just have to be the technical resource that's in the customer. But we've seen it go both ways, where we'll hire people from our customers and they'll hire people from us. So I think it's a combination of both internally and then also be thinking about it from, again, an external standpoint, and how can we bring other people in, the next generation, like you said, tapping into our CU network that we have. We're so lucky to be in, with such a great university right in our backyard, that I think we'll continue to do more. I think there's a lot of, again, room for growth there, to be bringing those people in as interns or potentially just helping them shadow to learn more about the private equity space and the tech space at the same time, given the dynamic of what our business does.
What's one, if you could only give young women one main piece of advice, and they're looking at getting into that C-suite level, what's that one piece of advice you would give them?
I think most people that know me know this is my favorite saying, which is eagles don't fly with pigeons. And it is, the sooner you can surround yourself with people that support you and elevate you and mentor you. It's like the same saying, like, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you should be surrounding yourself with the type of professional that you want to become. And women love to help other women. They do.
Yeah.
But we can also sometimes be put inadvertently in a competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the more you can identify the women that are there to say, there's room for all of us. There's room for, as again, for all of us to be there, having a seat at the table. It's not competition. It is better that we're in this together, the more successful you're going to be. And so I'm always looking through that lens of, is this person an eagle? Like, would I be proud to say this is my friend? Or, I go back to my YPO network, and, I'm surrounded by such amazing entrepreneurs that have accomplished so many things, and they're great mentors to me. And I always think, is this someone that I'd be excited to bring to a networking event that that I'm proud of?
Yeah.
And that's, kind of the lens that you want to be thinking through. Why would we surround ourselves with people that are bringing us down or aren't rooting for our best interest? And I want to be doing the same for them. So I think that's a good and easy lens to be thinking through when you're looking at your professional and your personal network, for that matter. Is everyone on Sundays, are they buckling in for a big week, or are they, partying all day, which is completely fine if that's the phase of life that you're in, or but you have to be thinking about, oh, I'd love to find friends that want to hike on Sunday, or, do something, maybe we go out for brunch, but then we're, doing something different later on in the day. And trying to balance those things, I think, are important around, again, you want to surround yourself with people that, again, I think are driven and love the things that you love to do personally, but also have that drive and that work ethic, so that you have other things to talk to them about too.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's amazing advice. I'm just going to push back into Altvia a little bit, and
Sure.
Because the growth in Altvia has been amazing, like it's very impressive. What's been the key to scaling without losing your edge in such a specialized industry?
scale is always tricky, right?
Yeah.
And we're in an environment, as many of you know, many people out there know, that it's not all about growth now. It is very much about your EBITDA margin and making sure you have a scalable and sustainable business with, how expensive it is to borrow capital, et cetera. So, it's an everyday question mark, right? Every single day we're balancing, and I always call it bookings and burn, the B's. Bookings and burn, what are we burning? Where can we be more efficient? And how are we booking things, right? And so every dollar that we're spending, is it contributing to potentially a booking?
Yeah.
And we have to think about that every single day. And, it lends itself to hard conversations, because it's like, oh, well, I need a resource because my people are so, they're so tired and they're strapped, they don't have any bandwidth, this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, is adding this resource going to support us booking more, whether it's expansion, whether it's, a new business logo, or are there things we can be doing with this dollar differently? And if so, if it's not going to drive a booking, then what can we be doing to be more efficient with the burn that we have and the people that we have? So you have to bring that back to the conversation. And when people start to understand the inner workings of the business, that's, again, it goes back to the transparency conversation, which is when you are actually transparent with people about how the inner workings work, how it, above the line and below the line, and why is that important, and what would drive a greater valuation for a business. And if they're in it with you, they're much more likely to understand, oh, well, if I add this resource, my margin is impacted. And then that's not great for the business long term. So even though, it might give me a little more bandwidth, longer term, when we go to exit the company, a lot of our people have equity. I think it's important. As you can't give everybody equity. It has to be something that you earn and you work for. And but I do think it's important to bring people in. And if they don't have equity now, that they understand the value of that down the line. So I think that helps when you're making these conversations about scaling a business, because you do have to find efficiencies. You can't just add heads to grow a business. That's not.
Yeah.
It's not an effective model. We all know that.
Check the
That's
box.
the obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've previously spoken about the importance of client referrals and consolidating vendors. How do you make sure at Altvia that you stay you stay the go-to choice over new point solutions that are consistently flooding the market?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, client referrals is everything. I tell my team this all the time. Our gross retention rate is the number one metric we need to be tracking towards. We have to keep our clients. It is imperative. And it is the key marker for a healthy business. And our client tenure is 7+ years on average. And so it is an extremely important point. And I think, especially in our market, it is very driven by reputation and making, who are my competitors using? Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that, and we compete with some public companies out there that have a lot more spend to get their brand out there. Yeah. And so the brand awareness factor is extremely important. And when you're not spending the millions of dollars that our competitors are just to get our name out there, we really have to lean in to our clients for that. It is imperative, because it is the least expensive way to be getting our brand out there and to get that word of mouth to drive referrals and to drive opportunities for our business. It's the number one grower for us. And so, I think client referrals are important at any stage of a business and at any size of a business, but they're especially important for us in the size of business that we are, and trying to be cognizant of our burn.
Yep. So what is, unfortunately, look, we're running out of time, and I have many SaaS questions to ask you. But what is one mistake that you've seen SaaS companies make when they're trying to scale in a niche like private capital, and how do they go about avoiding these common pitfalls or mistakes that they may be making?
I mean, the number one mistake I've seen is just trying to capture as much market share as possible, regardless of whether or not it's your core customer profile. And I think so many companies get so wrapped up in the growth, and they think, just because they were able to sell the product to a customer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to implement, support, and provide value to the customer longer term.
Yeah.
And so, I think you have to do the research. You have to take a step back before you just hire a massive sales and marketing team and go hit the ground running and try to grow the business as quickly as possible. You have to take the time to figure out, where does my product fit in the market? Where am I going to be the most successful in driving long-term client value and client tenure? And you might have to slow down growth for a minute to make sure that you're thinking about it. But I'd much rather that than churn through clients and be able to say I grew really well, but then, you have to consistently then sustain a growth model if you're churning out clients. And so it is better to just slow down, do the research, analyze your customer base, say, okay, these are the clients that are growing with us. These are the clients that are happy. These are the ones that, typically churn. And it's also sometimes hard. I would love to say, oh, we serve every single private equity firm and venture capital firm, regardless of size and regardless of strategy. And that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm being honest. And again, we don't have, it's not like we're still growing and we don't have endless resources. We're smart about the resources that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to say, okay, we know with certainty that this segment of the market is where we really are successful. Our win rates are 70+% in this segment. So let's spend the capital there. And over time, we will continue to grow and expand that. But sure, it'd be a hell of a lot easier to just say, we're going after everything. So just, if somebody's interested in buying us, just take it and run with it. And that's a tricky, hard thing when you sometimes have to say no. But I think it's the right thing for a long-term, sustainable business that can scale.
I think if with that foresight, that would reduce the possibilities of a lot of churn as well, which I know a lot of SaaS companies like that can be quite a big thing. The churn rates might be quite high, but with that thought process of how to do that, I think one would imagine, I'm assuming your churn rate is probably quite low, given, that you've sort of accelerated Altvia the way that you have. For other sort of leaders and CEOs that are looking at their SaaS businesses going, why is our churn rate like this? We offer a great product. We've got great staff. Why is our churn continuing to happen like this? What's something that you could recommend or give them a piece of advice to look at?
You have got to have an external party doing win-loss calls. I think that is something that we invested in, I don't know, maybe 2 years into my tenure here, and it has made such a difference. I mean, when we get these win-loss reports from this external consultant, again, it is important that it's not the salesperson. It's not someone that this person maybe built some form of personal connection with and feels bad being honest with. Yep. You get that true, unfiltered opinion. And when the win-loss reports come out via email, we send them to the entire organization, and everyone is reading them and commenting on them and trying to learn from why we're potentially losing opportunities. And so, or losing customers for that matter, making sure that you're understanding where are shortfallings and being really honest about it. So I think that is I would immediately invest in this again, independent consultant that can have a conversation with your customers or again, a prospect. It's again, win-loss reports are extremely pivotal, and it's important to understand why you win or why customers stay with you as well. On the contrary, you want to continue doing the things that are working. So it goes both ways, but that would be probably my number one piece of advice, to try to understand your churn in that way, because your people are going to have skewed opinions about it, of course. And oftentimes your clients have built rapport or relationships with your internal folks. So they're not going to be honest with someone from the team. So you do have to have that be an independent resource.
Yeah. Oh, yourself, if, we've all, at some point in our lives, we've all left a company for whatever the reason is. And when they ask, oh, why? If you know this person you've been dealing with, you're not going to give them the real reason, because you feel awful.
Yeah.
Of course. So that is why I think, again, independent is important, and you don't have to do it forever. You learn pretty quickly. You get a couple of these and all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, I was missing that. Or this is a core issue and this is solvable. And you want to find that out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Brie, just throw a question in there. Can you give us a hint? What does the future hold for Altvia and for yourself at Altvia?
Ooh, crystal ball question. I
If you got
think
nothing,
as the
Yeah, yeah, no, no pressure.
no pressure. You don't have to give us
But,
anything.
but answer in under 2 seconds, please.
I mean, it sounds so cliche, but it's going to be AI, right? I mean, we have got to continue to solve problems with the opportunity that AI presents. And so
Mm.
how do we do that, harness the opportunity without just leaning into the hype of it? And I
Yeah.
think it's, we always say it's got to help, not just be hype. And so I think that the future is going to be extremely AI driven. And
Yeah.
then in the private equity space and venture capital space, it's competitive right now.
Mhm.
Deals aren't flowing as much as they used to. So capital is not flowing the way that it was before. And so we've got to find, and we're going to be bringing to market many more tools that just help them get to their competitive edge.
Yeah.
Like, what is your competitive differentiator and how do we get that? How do we help you get that out into the market? I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of our prospects and clients are facing right now. And if you know one thing about building a business, it's you got to solve a problem that's in the market. So that's where we're going to be faced. That's where we're going to be spending a lot of our time.
Amazing. One last thing we always like to ask everyone that comes on our show, what does it mean to you to move the needle in your business?
I think if you're moving the needle for your people, you're moving the needle for the business. And so I think that is most important, is to be thinking about how you're developing, empowering, and enabling your people,
Mhm.
and they will show up for you. They will drive the business forward. You can't put it all on yourself. And so that's, I'm a people leader. I'm a people-driven leader through and through.
Yep.
And I will always believe that you build the right team, you build the right culture that is high performing and driven and has the right people around the table, you're going to see the needle get moved.
Yeah, I think it was Richard Branson that came out and said that his number one focus is the people that work for him. If you keep them happy and you treat them right, they will go above and beyond to do everything right for the company, and then it just flows naturally. And I could not agree more.
Totally. I'm sure we've all done it in our own careers. I mean, I can tell you every leader that I worked for that I would have. I mean, I jumped on airplanes left and right for one of my jobs. I think I was in 8 cities in 1 week at one
Oh,
point.
wow.
But it didn't faze me because I believed so wholeheartedly in the vision and the mission that had been set forth by my leader that I was ready to go. And I think we've got to, as a leader, you've got to do that for your people, and it creates opportunities for them. Again, they're the ones that look back on their opportunity here and say, dang, I learned a heck of a lot and I worked really hard, but it shaped my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I dropped everything and within 2 weeks moved across the other side of the world to, for the company, because I was like, they need me. I can do this. Let's do it. And, I was over there only for a few months or whatever, but it's like, it wasn't a question in my mind. It was not it was like, okay, done. I'll start packing. It's not an issue. And I think whilst not everyone, like every employee will have that, capability or anything like that. But and that is an extreme one. But it's
They still got that passion.
yes. And it's like if you can talk to your leader and they fuel you with more passion and excitement and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and you can actually believe in it, and then you not only believe in it, you can see it happening, you are going to go above and beyond every time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot about yourself when you look back and you say, oh my gosh, like in the moment, it feels like second nature, right? And then you look back and you're like, oh wow, and then you learn, like, I have a drive that I didn't, it goes back to exactly what we were talking about before, that you don't give yourself credit for at the time until you look back on it.
Exactly. Brie, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
It was fantastic. So before we go, you don't have to plug yourself, but let's give a little plug to Altvia in your words from the CEO of what Altvia can do for people, and where we can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, the market is a trickier market than private equity and venture capital professionals have ever seen. And so where Altvia is coming to the table, as I mentioned, we're very nimble. We innovate quickly. And so we are constantly innovating based on the challenges that we're seeing in the market. And so we know that raising capital is tough right now. And we also know that finding good deals is tough right now. And so at the end of the day, if you take one thing, that's what we're looking to help our customers do on a day in and day out basis. Find tools that will help you do your job more efficiently, that, again, hopefully make your day job easier to do is really where we're focused. And so we are a fund life cycle tool. We help front and middle office, and then we integrate into back office. But the nitty gritty is that we are looking for different and innovative ways to be helping our IR fundraising or deal team professionals do their day jobs much faster and more efficiently.
Thank you, Brie.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was great to chat with you both.
Yeah. Enjoy the summer, and we'll enjoy waiting for our summer to come back.
No doubt. No doubt.
Okay. Thanks so much, Brie. Ciao. To help support our continued mission to provide free, best-in-class advice from the world's most compelling business leaders, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell so you never miss an episode. See you next Thursday. Thanks for tuning in to The Business Game. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay connected. A big thank you to our major sponsor, TraffTrack, for powering today's episode, and join us again on the next episode of The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle.